"Won't you taste the brew I prepared specifically for you, darling?" my spouse Marcus inquired, his grin peculiar and hollow. I found myself seated at my brother-in-law's wife Rachel's sophisticated breakfast nook in her Memphis residence, where our family convened for our regular monthly gathering. The mug placed before me emitted an unusual, almost chemical odor that twisted my insides. My name is Victoria, and at 29 years old, I never envisioned doubting whether my own partner was attempting to harm me. However, following 3 years of matrimony and numerous episodes of mysterious illness, I had developed a sense of wariness, particularly concerning Rachel. She possessed a talent for creating circumstances that resulted in my sickness or embarrassment, consistently accompanied by that identical guileless expression Marcus currently displayed. "How considerate," I responded, manufacturing a smile as my thoughts whirled. The scent emanating from the mug was distinct from any coffee I had previously encountered. It transported me back to the previous month when I had required urgent medical attention after consuming herbal tea at Rachel's residence. The physicians were unable to clarify my condition, and Rachel had maintained she had prepared the beverage identically to her own. Rachel observed me keenly from her position opposite, mechanically stirring her own untasted coffee. "Marcus has developed quite an affinity for coffee making recently," she remarked with a knowing look. "He's been experimenting with various preparation techniques exclusively for you." Her emphasis on exclusively for you sent shivers through me. I had observed Marcus dedicating increased time at Rachel's residence lately, asserting they were organizing something special for our forthcoming anniversary. Yet something seemed wrong. The hushed exchanges that ceased upon my entrance, the cryptic messages I had glimpsed on his device, and presently this coffee with its distinctive aroma. I raised the mug, feigning a taste while examining their reactions. Marcus and Rachel shared a swift look that validated my concerns. Pretending to review my mobile device, I rose suddenly. "Oh my, I just remembered I must handle an urgent work matter. Rachel, might I utilize your private office?" As I passed Rachel's place setting, I purposefully lost my balance, swiftly exchanging our coffee mugs during the commotion of regaining my footing. "I apologize profusely," I declared, straightening myself. "How clumsy of me." Rachel dismissed my apology with a strained smile. "Simply be careful not to damage anything in the office." I acknowledged her and departed hastily, my pulse racing. From the office entrance, I maintained a clear view of them at the breakfast table. Now I merely needed to observe and wait. From my vantage point in the office doorway, I witnessed Rachel bringing the coffee mug to her mouth, and my stomach contracted with apprehension. A portion of me desired to intervene to alert her, yet I required confirmation of the truth. I had endured too many evenings in medical facilities, too many hours writhing in agony, invariably following shared meals with them. Our relationship hadn't always been troubled. When I initially encountered Marcus at a companion celebration in Memphis 3 years prior, he was captivating and caring. Rachel had appeared hospitable as well, extending invitations to family occasions and volunteering to assist with wedding preparations. However, reflecting back, I should have recognized the warning signs. The manner in which she would inadvertently ruin my attire at significant functions, or how my dishes always contained excessive seasoning when she contributed to cooking. The occurrences began modestly, an unsettled stomach occasionally, a minor adverse reaction periodically. Marcus constantly had a justification prepared. "Perhaps you consumed something earlier," or "you must be developing an illness." Yet the pattern was becoming evident. The most severe incident occurred 2 months ago when I required hospitalization following breakfast at their residence. The medical professionals discovered traces of an unidentifiable substance in my system, but Marcus persuaded everyone I must have ingested expired pharmaceuticals. I gripped the doorframe, observing as Rachel took another sip of the coffee. Marcus was engaged with his phone, appearing unconcerned. My own untouched mug remained cooling on the table where I had abandoned it. The chemical smell still pervaded my senses, causing me to shudder. A subtle trembling in Rachel's hand captured my attention. She placed down the mug, her complexion suddenly ashen. "Marcus," she uttered, her voice quavering. "Something isn't right." Marcus glanced upward, his expression transforming from bewilderment to terror as he comprehended which mug she was consuming from. He leaped up, toppling his chair. "Rachel, what's wrong?" Rachel's hands were now trembling violently. I feel." She attempted to stand but stumbled, grasping the table's edge for stability. "Marcus, what did you add to that coffee?" I emerged from the office, my phone already recording. Marcus was beside Rachel now, his face ghostly white. "That wasn't meant for your mug," he whispered, yet in the dining room silence his words resonated distinctly. Rachel's eyes expanded with understanding and dread. "Call emergency services," she gasped, collapsing to the floor. "Please." "I can't." I immediately dialed emergency services, my hands unwavering despite the pandemonium unfolding before me. Rachel was on the floor now, her body seized with violent trembling. Marcus knelt beside her, panic inscribed across his features as he realized their scheme had catastrophically reversed. "Emergency dispatch, yes, we require an ambulance at 2847 Willow Creek Lane," I stated clearly, maintaining my phone's recording function with my other hand. "My brother-in-law's wife appears to be experiencing a severe reaction to something in her coffee. She's conscious but undergoing tremors." As I conversed with the dispatcher, Rachel's gaze locked onto mine. The typical cold calculation in her stare was replaced by pure terror. "Victoria," she gasped. "You switched. You knew." "Ma'am, the ambulance is approaching," the dispatcher reassured me. "Please remain on the line." Marcus was becoming increasingly frantic. "Rachel, what's happening? That wasn't supposed to. It wasn't intended for." "Silence, Marcus." Rachel snapped through clenched teeth, her fury momentarily surpassing her distress. "This is entirely your fault. You claimed it would merely make her sufficiently ill to miss the directors' meeting next week. You assured me it wouldn't be detectable." My blood turned cold. The directors' meeting where I was scheduled to deliver my pitch for a significant client portfolio. The identical portfolio Rachel had been pursuing for months at our rival agencies. Everything began connecting. "The tea last month," I said, my voice remarkably steady. "And the breakfast incident 2 months ago. Those weren't accidents, were they?" Rachel's face contorted with another surge of pain. "The tea was meant to confine you to home during the Morrison contract pitch, but you attended regardless." She clutched her abdomen, bending forward. Marcus said. "He said we simply needed to undermine your credibility, convince clients you were undependable." The sound of emergency sirens filled the atmosphere outside. Marcus stood retreating from both of us. "Rachel, cease talking. You're not thinking clearly." "I know precisely what I'm saying," Rachel spat, her speech beginning to slur. "We've been orchestrating this for months, ever since Victoria began surpassing me at every client conference. You were supposed to ensure she consumed it today." The paramedics rushed through the entrance, and I promptly stepped aside to allow them to work. As they transferred Rachel onto a gurney, I stopped recording and transmitted the video to my personal email, then to my attorney. Marcus stood motionless, observing as his meticulously constructed scheme disintegrated around him. "I'll accompany her to the medical facility," I informed the paramedics, my voice resolute. "After all, I need to ensure my brother-in-law's wife receives appropriate care." I met Marcus's frightened gaze. "And I'm confident the physicians will be extremely curious about exactly what was in that coffee." The emergency department at Memphis Regional Medical Center was bustling with commotion as doctors hurried to treat Rachel. I occupied the waiting area, my phone clutched in my hand, reviewing the recording of Rachel's admission. The trembling in her voice, the alarm in her eyes. It constituted all the evidence I required to demonstrate this wasn't merely paranoia on my part. "Family of Rachel Chen," a nurse announced. I rose, noting Marcus's conspicuous absence. He had muttered something about locating parking 20 minutes earlier and hadn't reappeared. "I'm her sister-in-law," I said, following the nurse through the automated doors. "How is her condition?" "She's been stabilized, but we've identified troubling levels of toxic substances in her system." The nurse's expression was solemn. The physician would like to discuss some unusual discoveries in her laboratory results. Dr. Martinez, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and penetrating eyes, was waiting near Rachel's room. "Mrs. Chen, could you explain precisely what transpired before your sister-in-law became ill?" I drew a deep breath, retrieving my phone. "I believe you should listen to this initially." I played the recording from breakfast, observing the doctor's expression shift from professional concern to shock. "This is extremely serious," she said, making notations on her tablet. "The substance we identified isn't something that inadvertently appears in coffee. We're examining deliberate contamination." Just then, Marcus materialized at the corridor's end, his face pallid and perspiring. He had clearly overheard the doctor's statements. "Victoria," he began, advancing toward me. "Allow me to explain." "Remain where you are," Dr. Martinez cautioned, pressing the nurse's alert button. "Security to room 412, please." Marcus raised his hands in submission. "This is all a misunderstanding." Rachel was disoriented. She didn't comprehend what she was saying. "Indeed." I retrieved the texts I had uncovered on his phone the previous week, the ones I had secretly forwarded to myself. "So these messages between you and Rachel about ensuring she's incapacitated before the Mitchell presentation were merely casual conversation?" His face drained of all color. "You accessed my phone after I discovered the strange vials in your drawer, yes." I turned to Dr. Martinez. "Doctor, I've been hospitalized 3 times in the past half year with unexplained conditions. I'd like to know if they correspond with what you found in Rachel's system today." The doctor's eyes narrowed. "We'll need to conduct some tests for comparison. Security will ensure your husband remains available for questioning." 2 security officers appeared, positioning themselves on either side of Marcus. He looked trapped, his carefully maintained facade crumbling. "Rachel and I," he stammered, "we were simply attempting to help you slow down. You were overworking yourself, acquiring all the major clients. Rachel said if we could just make you take some time off. By poisoning me." My voice was steady even as my hands trembled with fury. "How long have you been doing this? Was it you who tampered with my meal at the holiday party as well?" Marcus's silence provided all the confirmation I needed. Behind him, I could observe Rachel's room where she lay connected to various monitoring devices. Her earlier boldness was gone, replaced by the fear of someone who recognized their schemes had finally caught up with them. "Detective Brooks is en route," Dr. Martinez said quietly. "She'll want to collect statements from everyone involved." I nodded, experiencing an unusual sense of calm. The truth was finally emerging, and there was no reversing it. Detective Brooks arrived within the hour, her presence commanding attention in the sterile hospital corridor. She was an experienced investigator who specialized in domestic abuse cases, and she listened attentively as I played the recording from breakfast and showed her the text messages. "Mrs. Chen," she said, reviewing her notes, "you mentioned previous hospitalizations. Can you elaborate on those incidents?" I retrieved my phone again, opening a document I had been quietly maintaining for months. The first time was in February after a dinner at Rachel's house. I experienced severe abdominal pain and vertigo. The second was in April, the tea incident, and then in June after breakfast with them. My voice remained steady as I continued. Each time, the symptoms were similar but just varied enough that the doctors couldn't identify a cause. The detective's eyes narrowed as she examined my detailed log of dates, symptoms, and circumstances. "And you've been keeping records?" I hesitated before retrieving another phone from my purse. Ever since I noticed the pattern, I also began carrying a backup phone with a separate number. I used it to record conversations when I was around them. I have several where Rachel and Marcus discuss their plans, though they're cautious not to be explicit. In one of the recordings, Rachel's voice came through distinctly. "The Mitchell account is worth millions, Marcus. We can't allow her to sabotage everything we've worked for. Just adhere to the plan. A few days of illness should suffice." Marcus's response was equally incriminating. "I've acquired something more potent this time. She won't make it to the presentation." Detective Brooks's expression hardened as she listened. Through the window of Rachel's room, I could see my sister-in-law was now awake, appearing significantly less confident than she had at breakfast. "The hospital is conducting toxicology screenings," the detective informed me. "Dr. Martinez has already identified several substances that don't occur naturally. We'll need samples from your residence as well." A disturbance down the corridor captured our attention. Marcus was disputing with the security officers, his voice escalating in desperation. "I need to speak with my wife," he shouted. "Victoria, please. You don't understand. We were trying to protect you." Detective Brooks stepped between us. "Mr. Chen, you're not improving your situation. We've already found evidence of premeditation." "Premeditation?" Marcus laughed, a hollow sound that reverberated through the corridor. "We were simply attempting to slow her down. She was exhausting herself, claiming all the major accounts. Rachel said if we could just make her take some time off. By poisoning her." Detective Brooks's voice was sharp. "That's not protection, Mr. Chen. That's attempted murder." The color drained from Marcus's face. "Murder? No, that's not. We never intended." "Then what precisely did you intend to do?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. "When you added something to my coffee this morning, what was supposed to happen?" Marcus's silence spoke volumes. Behind him, I could see Rachel observing through her hospital room window, her face a mask of fear and calculation. I wondered if she was attempting to devise how to manipulate this, how to rationalize months of systematic poisoning as some sort of misguided attempt at helping me. "We'll need both of their phones," Detective Brooks told the security officers. "And I want officers stationed at both doors. Nobody departs until we receive the toxicology results." Dr. Martinez entered Rachel's room with a tablet in hand, her expression grim as she reviewed the test results. Detective Brooks and I followed, while Marcus remained outside with the guards. Rachel attempted to sit up straighter in her hospital bed, but the tremors hadn't completely subsided. "The toxicology report shows elevated levels of several substances," Dr. Martinez announced, her voice clinical. "Most concerning is the presence of a particular compound that's typically used in pharmaceutical research. It's not something the general public should have access to." Rachel's face paled. "That's impossible." Marcus said it was just something to cause mild symptoms. "Mild symptoms?" Detective Brooks interrupted, taking out her notebook. "Like the ones your sister-in-law experienced over the past 6 months." The door opened, and another detective entered holding an evidence bag. "We found these in Mr. Chen's office desk at the Chen Marketing Group," he reported, presenting several small vials with clinical labels, along with detailed notes about dosages and reactions. I felt my knees weaken as I realized the full scope of their plan. You were documenting everything, like some kind of experiment. It wasn't like that, Rachel protested, but her voice wavered. We just needed to track what was effective. The first few attempts weren't potent enough. You kept appearing at meetings anyway. So you increased the dosages, Detective Brooks concluded, examining the vials. Did you know these substances could be lethal in higher concentrations? The room fell silent. Marcus, still visible through the window, sank into a chair in the hallway, his head in his hands. The Mitchell account, I said slowly, pieces clicking into place. It wasn't just about that presentation, was it? You needed me out of the way permanently because the client specifically requested me as their lead. Rachel's face contorted with a mixture of anger and fear. You were destroying everything. I built that client portfolio for years, and then you appear and suddenly everyone wants to work with you instead. Marcus said he could fix it. By killing me. The words hung in the air, heavy with accusation. We weren't trying to. Rachel started, but Dr. Martinez cut her off. The concentration in the coffee you drank today, the doctor stated, looking directly at Rachel, was significantly higher than previous samples we've analyzed from Mrs. Chen's earlier hospital visits. If she had consumed it, the outcome would have been severe, possibly fatal. Detective Brooks turned to the other officer. We'll need a full warrant for both their homes and offices. And contact the pharmaceutical company listed on these vials. Find out how they obtained these substances. Rachel slumped back against her pillows, the fight draining from her face. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she whispered. Marcus kept saying we just needed one more attempt. I stepped closer to her bed, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. Every time I got sick, every meeting I missed, every client I lost, you were both there watching, taking notes on how your poison was affecting me. What kind of people does that make you? The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, I could hear Marcus being read his rights as additional officers arrived. Rachel stared at her hands, unable to meet my gaze. Detective, I said, turning away from my sister-in-law. I'm ready to make my formal statement now. The trial lasted 3 weeks, but it felt like years. I sat in the courtroom each day, watching as the prosecution methodically laid out their case against Marcus and Rachel. The evidence was overwhelming. The vials from Marcus's office, their detailed notes on each poisoning attempt, the recorded conversations and text messages discussing their plans. What struck me most was their demeanor throughout the proceedings. Rachel, usually so polished and confident, looked diminished in her defendant's chair. Marcus couldn't even look at me, keeping his eyes fixed on the floor as expert witnesses detailed the potentially lethal effects of the substances they'd been using. Dr. Martinez's testimony was particularly damning. She presented a comprehensive analysis showing how they had gradually increased the dosages over time, demonstrating clear intent to cause serious harm. The pharmaceutical company representative confirmed that Marcus had stolen the compounds through his college friend who worked in their research department. The defendants showed a calculated pattern of behavior, the prosecutor argued in her closing statement. This wasn't just corporate sabotage. It was a systematic attempt to harm Mrs. Chen with a clear escalation that could have resulted in death. When the verdict was finally read, I felt no joy, only relief. Both Marcus and Rachel were found guilty on multiple counts, including attempted murder and conspiracy. The judge's words echoed through the silent courtroom. The premeditated nature of these actions, carried out against a family member over an extended period, demands the maximum sentence. I watched as they were led away in handcuffs, thinking about how greed and jealousy had twisted two people I once trusted into something unrecognizable. Their business, their reputations, their freedom, all sacrificed in an attempt to destroy me. 1 year after the trial, I stood at the podium of the Memphis Business Leaders Conference, preparing to give the keynote speech. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was exactly the kind of opportunity Rachel had tried to prevent me from achieving. The Mitchell account, which she and Marcus had been so desperate to steal, had led to several more major clients, establishing me as one of the top marketing executives in the region. Success isn't just about talent or hard work, I began, looking out at the sea of faces. It's about integrity, about building genuine relationships based on trust. I paused, letting my words sink in. Sometimes the biggest threats to our success come from those closest to us. But surviving those challenges makes us stronger. After my speech, several young professionals approached me seeking advice. One woman, her eyes bright with determination, asked how I'd maintained my composure throughout the ordeal. I focused on what I could control, I told her. I gathered evidence, trusted my instincts, and refused to let fear stop me from pursuing my goals. Later that evening, I received an email from the Mitchell client confirming they were renewing their contract for another 3 years. I smiled, thinking about how differently things might have turned out if I hadn't trusted my instincts that day at breakfast. The local paper had run a small article that morning about Rachel and Marcus beginning their prison sentences. I didn't read it. Instead, I focused on the proposal for my newest client project, knowing that the best revenge wasn't about getting even. It was about moving forward and succeeding despite those who tried to hold you back.